Great, thanks Keith. Good afternoon all. I'm Andy Fidler, Principal Network Architect in BT Technology, and I'm currently leading BT's assessment of the opportunities and risks of DNS over HTTPS. And I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes outlining potential ISP challenges we see with DNS over HTTPS. So I'd like to start by making the problem statement that DNS over HTTPS could be a game changer in operator and application provider dynamics. So let me set the backdrop to this is that these standards behind DOE have been fast-tracked through the IETF in the last 6 to 8 months. Mozilla and Google have started to show their early technical intentions here and plans. So it's now a matter of really when this will happen and launch rather than if. And once it's launched, how quickly and how much traffic will move from plain text DNS to DNS over HTTPS? And will it be a one-way street? So onto the impact area. Without cross-industry engagement, we believe that this step change has the potential to significantly impact the following operator areas. The first one is customer experience. The second one is online harm protection capabilities, then network cost base, regulatory obligations, and cybersecurity capabilities. And I will outline all of these in the presentation. And I'm keen to use this presentation as a call to action on how UK operators and wider UK industry can respond to the latest developments that Keith mentioned at IETF and smooth the path to adoption. So let's delve into a bit more detail on what DNS over HTTPS is and why our ISP is concerned with. I'm not going to go into a great amount of the details around what DOE is, because this was covered by Sarah Dickinson's presentation to UKNOF43. All I will say is that DNS over HTTPS is DNS requests mixed in with HTTPS traffic, and it's defined in RFC 8484. If you look at the protocol, and just took the protocol on its own, you could say that it has good privacy and security intentions. And also, everything might be okay if it was just a matter of existing distributed DNS players upgrading their DNS servers to support DNS over HTTPS. However, we see that early adoption is likely to be driven through centralized third-party DOE providers, which are highly likely to be cloud-based. And this implementation and early adoption risks bypassing key ISP capabilities, risking implementation issues, customer experience issues, and other unintended consequences across the ecosystem. So how do we see that DOE will be realized on devices and applications? So at the moment, the majority of devices use their default ISP DNS capabilities set on the device operating system or the hubs or the kernels. But going forward, DOE could drive a shift change here, because you could move to your device applications being able to select their own DOE provider. So on the same device, I could have my browser application of choice talking to one DOE provider. I could have a social media app talking to a second DOE provider, and a banking app talking to a third DOE provider. So this raises many questions around customer experience, privacy, trust, and vulnerability exploitation risks. For example, how will an individual app DOE choice impact on other applications and device operating system settings? This side of the DOE discovery work is still ongoing within the IETF DOE working group. One other angle I just wanted to touch on here was from a privacy perspective. At the moment with ISP DNSs, it's probably fair to say that the ISPs, through their DNS servers, will have a household level view of devices, PlayStations, Xbox, other game consoles, and all the different types of devices across IoT devices and home. So they will have an aggregated view of that household. But with DOE, you could see it moving to more the DOE providers will get particular insight which could be more based on a customer application level, because each application could be pointed to their individual DOE provider. So it may be a shift in the privacy dynamics. Now I want to move on to the impact areas. The first one is a topical one, given that the DCMS launched their white paper on online harm protection yesterday. So presently, at the moment, most UK broadband customers can set their content protection settings once and then be reassured that all their network devices, smartphones, tablets, game consoles, are protected in terms of parental controls and malware blocking. Very much a set once and then rest reassured. And for the majority of the ISPs, this is all done through their DNS capabilities. If we move to a world with DOE, we risk that customers may need to set up separate content filtering on a per-device application basis, risking inconsistent experiences. So at the moment, I can rest assured I've got one global policy set at home, which applies across my son's device, my daughter's device, gaming consoles, etc. Going forward, would I have to go onto my son's device and set parental controls for a particular browser application, then do that for a social media app, then do that for my daughter's device, making a more inconsistent experience? Also, will our customers realise that if they change to a third-party DOE provider, it's going to bypass their existing ISP content filtering, and they're going to have to reset that up? So that's the impact to online harm protection. Next area I want to cover is the impact on content caching. ISPs and CDN vendors have invested considerably on-net content caches to give consumers the best experience and to minimise our network costs. There's two ways that ISPs typically route customers to on-net content caches. The first one is DNS recursor, and the second one uses the insertion of eDNS 0 header information. Some of the cloud DOE providers have indicated that they may block eDNS 0 information on apparent grounds of privacy. If that is blocked, then that will impact our ability to route certain types of content to on-net content caches. From talking to a couple of large ISPs in the UK, that could equate to up to 40% of content currently cached. Putting that in terms of traffic, from a BT perspective, that could mean an extra couple of terabits per second hitting the internet, rather than our local content caches. I appreciate that's a view from the larger ISPs, and I would welcome a view from the smaller ISPs today. So that's the impact on content caching. The other area I want to touch on is the impact to customer service and industry benchmarks. On customer service, ISPs also use DNS redirects for service support. For example, device hub setup, mobile pay-as-you-go top-up, and broadband account support. Also, ISPs use captive portals for Wi-Fi hotspots. So another question is, how will these be impacted or bypassed by DNS over HTTPS? I'll give an example here. If you have a customer on a mobile pay-as-you-go, if they run out of credit, if they're using their ISP DNS capability, we're able to redirect them to a page where we can ask them to top up their credit. If they move and exercise their right to move to a DOE provider, once they go out of credit, that DOE traffic will be treated as chargeable, so we might block it. It will get blocked because they've exceeded their cost and their limit. So then they're left thinking, where do I go? They would have to work that issue out for themselves and use another route to top up. Not a great customer experience. Staying with the customer experience angle, DOE is going to introduce a new third party into the dynamics of customer support. When broadband customers have an issue, who will they know to contact? Their ISP or their third party DOE provider? If the issue is complex, how are the two going to work together to resolve it? Also moving on customer experience to industry performance benchmarks. I've listed the list of some of the Ofcom broadband research performance metrics. You can quickly see many of them have the potential to be impacted by the use of third-party DOE. For example, web browsing speed, latency, DNS resolution, DNS failure. So again, my question is here, how will we quantify the impacts? Will we need to adjust as an industry these measures? I'm aware that in the US, Sam knows have recently kicked off an activity with a number of US academia and US ISPs to investigate performance metrics and measurement opportunities. Do we need to run a similar study in the UK? Moving on to government and regulatory blocking and cybersecurity. On government regulatory blocking, DNS blocking is the most granular tool in the kit box used by UK ISPs to implement government regulation blocking orders. Clearly, if UK ISPs are no longer in the DNS path, we won't be able to fulfill certain domain particular court order blocking requests. So instead, will the government need to approach a collection of third-party DOE providers who may be outside the UK jurisdiction? Moving on to cybersecurity. ISPs also derive cybersecurity intelligence from malware activity and passive DNS insight. And the volume of that insight is based on our customers using our DNS. If customers move into third-party DOE, then that will reduce the volume of the insight we have. Also, the privacy and encryption of DOE is a bit of a double-edged sword. Because yes, it may give better privacy to customers, but will it give the hackers also an opportunity to hide their malware and their paths? And how are ISPs going to respond to this in developing new security toolkits? It's probably not unfair to say that DOE is probably one of the hottest topics in the DNS community at the moment. So one question you're probably all asking is, what happened in Prague a fortnight ago? So there was 2 draft IDs which were submitted to the DOE working group, and a lot of these covered a lot of the details I've run through in the presentation. These IDs were not formally accepted due to being out of scope of the existing DOE working group charter. However, they received considerable discussion at the DOE working group session and at a side meeting. I hear the rooms were packed and also there was long queues out of the room to the mic. So I understand that the IETF area directors are now considering the following next steps on what to do with these IDs. The first one is to await the completion of the DOE discovery work, then potentially recharge the DOE working group to explore these wider issues. The second option is to redirect it to the DNS operations working group. A third one is create a new working group within the IETF to explore these wider operational policy and governance aspects. I would encourage UK ISPs and operators to actively engage with these ongoing discussions through the DOE mailing list. Well, I've included all the links to the mailing list and also the videos from Prague. However, it's important to note that these IDs did prompt discussions that led to Google and Mozilla publishing their DOE plans. So let's delve into what Mozilla and Google said in Prague through the IETF mailing lists. So Mozilla said, we may have DOE TRR on by default in some regions and not others. The user will be informed that we have enabled the use of a TRR and have the opportunity to turn it off at that time. Google, in contrast, said, we will provide our users with meaningful choice and control, e.g. allow end users admins to control and configure this feature, whether they want to use a custom DOE server or just keep on using their regular DNS. There are no plans to force any particular resolver without user consent opt-in. Great insight, but still a lot of open questions exist. For example, who will define and govern the DOE TRR discovery framework? Will that be ICANN? Will it be W3C? Will it be the CAB forum? Will it be DNS OARC? And what will ISPs need to do to become a trusted recursive resolver? Next question I have is Mozilla mentioned that the users will be informed that they've enabled DOE. What form will this take? Will it just be a line in some release notes that people don't often read and just tick? Or will it be an explicit notification call to action, which people can't miss? Building on that last point, and also considering GDPR regulation, how will customers, how will the browsers and DOE providers capture informed and meaningful consent for DOE? And how are they going to explain to a typical user what DNS is, let alone what DOE is? And expanding on that point, for customers who already have broadband parental controls from their ISP, how are they going to explain that if they accept that tick box option to move to DOE, it will bypass their existing broadband parental controls and malware protection, and they're going to have to re-establish those? Lastly, both parties mentioned about custom entries. But how are these going to be verified in terms of trust and authenticity? So, we've covered a lot of the issues and options. So what are the opportunities to reduce the DOE implementation risks? So I think my first tip is for ISPs to start now planning your strategy around DNS over HTTPS. Explore roadmap opportunities to uplift your existing DNS servers, DNS security, DNS over TLS, and DNS over HTTPS. Yes, you've got the software side to it, but also consider the non-functionals in terms of server capacity, performance impact from the encryption overhead, additional load balancing, caching from a mobile perspective, and IPv6 addressing aspects, and of course certificate management support. So that's the first one. Second one is, I would say, encouraging ISPs to continue engaging in the IETF standards discussions. Let's see if we can enhance the work by addressing some of the implementation or wider implementation issues. Then the third area is the UK ISP Alliance. It's starting to discuss DOE with government and regulatory policymakers. Again, I would encourage operator and ISP engagement in these discussions. And lastly, is I think from an early engagement perspective, ISP should be aware of the following wider IETF activities. Potentially the next step after DOE is DNS over QUIC. Yes, this is early days discussions in the IETF, but let's learn from the lessons of DOE and make sure ISPs are engaged in that discussion now, not to the later opportunity. Next one is TLS 1.3. Yes, the standard is complete, but have people fully understood the implementation issues that this will cause operators? And maybe that's a topic for discussion at future UKNOF meetings. And the last one is encrypted server name indication. Again, this is in early stage of development within the IETF, but it is likely to have significant impact on the way we do parental controls, because it will encrypt the IP payload even more. So my closing summary is, DOE as an encryption-based protocol has good privacy and security intentions. However, it may create ISP implementation issues and unintended consequences across the ecosystem. For example, customer experience, network cost, regulatory obligations, cybersecurity may all be adversely impacted. So the call here is really, how can UK industry work together to address these issues? And the key question I have is, which fora in the UK is most appropriate for these discussions? And lastly, we would welcome operator and industry collaboration on these issues, and let's see how we can develop solutions. Many thanks for your time. Any questions? Brett.
Brett Carr from Norway. Thanks for that, Andy. It feels like the sky's falling in. Could you go back a couple of slides?
Yeah.
Yeah, so forward one. No, forward one. Forward one. So, if I look at, from BT's perspective, I look at those 4 points, I very much see that you are doing 2, 3 and 4, and I'm interested to know what you are doing from a 1 perspective. So what is your roadmap that you can reveal around DNSSEC? I don't think you currently do DNSSEC validation. You certainly don't sign the BT.com zone. And what are you doing around DOT and DOH?
Has Neil prompted you to raise this question, Brett? Because he's kicking me on it. All I can say on this is that we are looking at roadmap aspects around DNS security, DOT and DOT from a BT perspective. I can't comment on the timescales at the moment, but it's certainly something we're treating seriously.
Thank you. Hello. Jan George, Internet Society, but speaking on my own capacity as a random guy from the internet. Here we need to decouple 2 things. DOH as a protocol, it's fine. It's another way of sending DNS queries and receiving the answers back, like DOT, DOH, DOC, whichever. The intent of implementation is what is worrying me and also you. You make some good points. For example, I'm testing back in my lab. I'm testing with Firefox and Chrome, and all of a sudden, if I connect my computer to IPv6 only network that has DNS 6.4 and Net 6.4, all of a sudden I can't reach IPv4 content anymore, because the DOH server on the other side does not have DNS 6.4 functionality and is not synthesizing quad A records for me and directing the traffic to Net 6.4 translation box. So if the application providers think that they can just implement DOH, it will just not work in all environments. They need to understand that the machine in Net 6.4 environment will just stop reaching the IPv4 content. Are they aware of this? Should we tell them this? Did anyone think about this? If I would be the implementer, I would probably deploy it in a way that the DNS server that you get from the network, you do the discovery. Does it support DOT? Does it support DOH? If not, fall back to the normal DNS operations. That's how I would do it. But not every application. If I have 100 applications on my machine, will each application talk to a different DNS server around the world? That's madness.
Yeah.
We are driving the whole thing into the madness. We are doing this to ourselves. Thank you.
I think you raised some really good points there. I think that's one of the key things we're keen to have in part of that discussion over who defines what DOH trusted recursive resolver is, what the performance metrics, industry guidelines, best practices, and those discussions should be built into that.
Hi, it's David Groves from Akamai here. I really like the presentation. I think almost everything here is kind of a layer 8 problem rather than like, as people have said, the protocol's fine. It's how people are doing it. And I'm slightly worried that there's a course people are taking here where they are looking at, everyone's got their own little agenda and their own thing they're trying to achieve out of this, and it's very easy to say that you're doing something for the good of user privacy and for the good of the security of the traffic and all the rest of it without letting the user be aware of the other things that are happening to them because of it. And I mean, I've got the concern that I'm sure many people have here about directing this traffic and the costs. I've done analysis on this as well, and the multi-terabit figures of extra UK content to serve is terrifying. But I think this is the kind of thing, if everyone would work together, we'd probably find a way that improves everything for everybody. But at the moment, I'm worried this is turning into winners and losers. And yeah.
No, again, some great points. Yeah. Okay. Tom.
Thank you, Andy. It's actually a fantastic presentation, and you know that we've spoken about this a little bit internally before today, and I was I realise as I was watching you present this that there is potentially an angle that we haven't yet thought of. Maybe, I'm not sure. Just hear me out. Are the operating system vendors annoyed about this? That they are having the potential for DNS resolution taken away from the operating system as a job that it does and a function that it provides to applications? And if they are unhappy about this, are they getting involved and are they voicing these opinions? And have they been engaging? And could we help them if not?
I think it's a good point, Tom, and I think we're starting to have those discussions both with device vendors, OEMs, and also the operating systems. But I think it's very much early days in terms of those discussions. And I think it's very much been the browsers and sort of the application providers who've been active in the IETF discussions.
Yeah, I mean, the issue there is that you're moving the resolution function from the operating system to the application. So you then have to configure your name resolvers in multiple places in any one system instead of just one place in the resolver. So, okay, yeah, we got Steve at the back there. And then, yeah, one more question after Steve.
UKNOF. It just struck me that this whole subject has got a huge number of technical ramifications. And the internet's always been a very disruptive technology. But when you talked about it, you had a lot of things about the user and this kind of the social implications of this and dealing with the daughter's thing. And I wonder whether perhaps those two need to be decoupled, that we should be concentrating on getting a technical answer to this and trying to solve the multifarious technical problems. And the social bit actually has to then follow on. We create a good network, and then we find a good way to use that network.
I think that's a fair approach. I think it's a layered approach, so you address it at the technical standards level, then the wider policy and a user perspective. Also, I'm conscious that very much the presentation covered focusing on a consumer angle, but also it has far-reaching impacts on the enterprise world and business world as well.
Okay, and then Andrew, and then we need to move on to the next talk.
Hello, hi, this is Andrew for High Tide. Has anyone thought about the impacts, as you mentioned, on the corporate world? A lot of people use split DNS, for example, where they host a copy of it internally and externally to redirect people's traffic, to redirect requests internally. A lot of the Microsoft stack, for example, highly pushes split DNS for authentication, conditional access, all of this sort of stuff. If you have to start treating this on a per application layer in an enterprise, you need to triple your IT organization.
Yeah, no, I agree. Split DNS, Horizon is definitely another interesting area.
Okay, thank you very much, Andy.